Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Jason Fang. He is the Director of Growth Marketing at Zeplin, which is a platform that really helps product managers work with engineers to turn designs into code so they can collaborate better. Super excited to have you on the show today. You've obviously been in the space for a long time, so I'm assuming you've seen a lot of growth in different areas and trends take place. Would love to kind of get your perspective on how you ended up at Zeppelin and what are you doing today? How are you using data?
Yeah, thanks for that intro. So yes, I'm currently at Zeppelin and I've been at Zeppelin for about 3 years. One of the really interesting things as like a marketer that I was excited to work on was product-led growth, which is, for those who are unfamiliar, the whole idea of getting users onto self-serve tools and then taking that usage and turning that into an enterprise subscription. It's like a part of marketing that, works on marketing directly to the user. It's very product centric. It's very data centric. And, that was like a big reason why I was excited to join Zeppelin because because of all the bottom up usage and to be able to wrap that into a enterprise solution. Like as a little bit of background, like I'm a scientist by education. And the thing I love about marketing is that like it combines business problems with like traditional scientific method, like making hypotheses and backing them up with data, and also just like an element of creative taste. I think like that's why growth marketing is really the perfect career path for my own interests. And I've been like in a variety of like software and B2B like growth marketing roles, both at startups and large companies. As a marketer, a big part of your job is to just get the right message to the right audience at the right time. And the way people do that has always been segmentation. Like, so for example, at Zeppelin, I want to make sure product designers and engineers are getting relevant messages when there's like a new product update. And then you can take that like even one step further. You can take that segmentation one step further. You can send like other versions of your message to users that have started to onboard or users that are already mature or like users in rapidly growing paid plans. So there's like a bunch of possibilities and all that segmentation, all that data is just very complex and is getting more complex, I think, in recent years. Yeah, so that's like, I think the biggest thing as like a marketer to just think about all the different dimensions that you can slice your data and segment your users. And that's, I think, like the biggest, like my biggest interaction with data and marketing on like a day-to-day basis.
I want to dial in on a couple things you said, specifically on the segmentation side of targeting different users and based on where they are in the product. How do y'all think about that at Zeppelin today? And I guess like what do some of those segmentations look like?
So I think there's like the sort of the baseline segmentations that are fairly obvious. So like the baseline segmentations are just like, well, what kind of user are you? We work across the team. We have designers, or primarily designers, developers, and product managers. And like one of the baseline segmentations is just like, how do we communicate the right message for each of those personas? There's also an element of user behavior, like how long have they been using a tool? How fluent are they using that tool? And like, fluency is an amalgamation of many other like sub metrics on and like many other data points on what they're doing. Then there's like basically payment history, essentially. Like, hey, how with the organization that this company is at, like what's our customer history with them? How long have they been a customer? Are they expanding? Are they happy? Things like that. And then finally, I think the last dimension is firmographics. Like just what kind of company are they? Where are they located? What's their industry? And like based on that, like sort of the next level we can extrapolate is just like what is their use case? Why are they using Zeppelin to deliver products?
So where does the central definition of the customer live? Like where do y'all define all of this?
Yeah, so we define this in our data warehouse, and we have a data warehouse in Snowflake, and we have a bunch of different teams, like the marketing team, our product team, a lot of our go-to-market teams, customer service, customer success. They're all working out of the central definition of like who the customer is and like what they're doing, and this stuff all lives in Snowflake. We have like a set of sort of standard definitions or standard fields of like users, and then we translate like those, like you had mentioned, like, well, I guess like different teams within Zeppelin have different use cases for this data. So
Mhm.
like, for example, our customer success team is able to look at a customer and know like, based on their usage, based on all this other, like all these other data points, is a customer like green, yellow, red. Same for marketing. Like we know like, hey, is this we have the metrics that we care about. Like, is this customer new? How far in the onboarding process are they? Stuff like that.
Why did you decide to go with this whole warehouse-centric architecture of defining the customer in the warehouse and then pushing those definitions back out to your tools versus, I guess, maybe choosing something like a CDP?
The number one reason was just the complexity of our data. With our product, we have a number of many to many relationships. So like a single user can be in multiple organizations, can be in multiple projects. And then organizations, for example, can have different types of billing structures and can roll up into, and like a single account can have multiple organizations. All this stuff is like many to many. And the computations that are required to basically get to the metrics that we want, we're able to do that. We're like Snowflake or data warehouses in general are sort of built for this sort of complex computation. So that was the number one reason that that was the number one reason why we consolidated this in a data warehouse.
So it sounds like it's been a bit of a journey at Zeplin, one centralizing this definition of the customer in y'all's warehouse. How do y'all think about actually like taking action and using that data to drive outcomes that move the needle?
Yeah, so all of our different teams that are accessing this data consume the data within like various different downstream applications. So like, for example, marketing works a lot in HubSpot. Our sales team is based out of Salesforce. Our support team is based out of Intercom. And what we do is we think of like Hightouch as the way that we get this data from our data warehouse and enrich all of our downstream tools. And then within Hightouch, because we're able to basically specify the data models, we're able to send like different data. We're able to send different calculations off of the same like core source of data into these various different tools for these different use cases.
How would you solve this if you didn't have a way to connect to your data warehouse and automatically sync data down to those destinations?
That's a really interesting question. So like, we've only been using Hightouch since 2020. And before that, like, I've been marketing for a long time and we've approached this problem in basically two ways. One was just the manual CSV export. So like once a week, once a day, we would download the data from one location. We would paste into a spreadsheet. Like we would do some sort of model inside the spreadsheet that would transform the data, download it again, and then upload it into your other tool. That was like a manual thing. And like, I know it sounds like surprising these days, but like, I think in 2015, 2016, it was a standard thing that like companies had basically, one or two marketers that were just doing like duct tape work amongst different systems, and like having a centralized data source and a reverse ETL tool just solves like a lot of these like duct tape problems. That's the first way. The second way is like amongst like, larger companies I've been at, you would be building these custom data pipelines. And essentially you would ask a data engineer, hey, it's like every day, sync like point A to point B, sync this data. And that solved like a lot of the problems that were involved in like the manual work. I'd say, like the downsides of that were like, first of all, it took time. At large organizations, you might be like requesting this data sync for like a month and you're like, okay, well, we can't launch this campaign until this data sync is here. And then every time we need to make a change, that also like, required more Jira tickets, more process, just get that over the finish line.
Yeah, the ticketing system is one I hear commonly. Marketing submits a ticket to data and then they have to prioritize it, and once it gets, high enough on the list, they finally get to it. As far as like the custom integrations, yeah, it's a common challenge we hear a lot because one is like downstream destinations are constantly changing their APIs. So you constantly have to run a lot of maintenance. And then anytime you want to add like another attribute or another data point, it's like you have to rebuild almost from scratch entirely.
Yeah, the great thing about the composable like CDP structure is that it just makes all of that sort of self-serve for the marketing team. And in some ways, it empowers the marketing team to think about like to think outside the box when it comes to like what is the next like personalization or segmentation that I can do. When you don't have that, you like have a culture where it's like, all right, we got to work it within these constraints. But these are like artificial constraints that are sort of
Hmm.
set by, I don't know, like cross-functional priorities or something. And having a self-serve tool like that, that gives marketers more power to control what data is available, that just like unlocks, a lot more potential, a lot more creativity in sort of your campaigns and just allows for better execution.
And I guess the flip side of that is you're opening up more engineering resources too, because like they can spend more time on analytics and modeling the data and unlocking those new insights that marketing can use, which is kind of an interesting
Yeah.
thing to think about because a lot of times one of the hardest things to do is quantify the impact of a data team. But with this composable CDP architecture, you're able to tie the value of their data directly to the outcomes your marketing teams are driving, whether that's, optimizing like ad spend in Google Ads or, running a hyper specific lifecycle marketing campaign in Salesforce. You can directly draw a line between that revenue and the data that enabled it.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the data team is now thinking more about what are the different like models we could build and what are like ways that we could make our data more useful rather
Hmm.
than how to get it from like point A to point B. I've never met like a data engineer who was like, I love maintaining these custom pipelines, but they're excited about like what they're excited about is like, oh, can we build a predictive model to like
Hmm.
predict propensity to do whatever? Stuff like that is the stuff that like I think where there's real value in having a data team and having a composable CDP sort of enables all of that by like taking out a lot of the administrative work that they're doing.
What are kind of the biggest challenges you see to, companies looking to adopt this warehouse centric architecture? And I guess what advice would you give to someone looking to do this?
I think the most important thing in evaluating sort of whether this composable CDP model makes sense is to figure out the maturity of your data warehouse. Even though data warehouses are supposedly like the single source of truth for organizations, like many times they're not. Many times like people are working in different schemas that come from different places, so on and so forth. And if you have that sort of system, then you're going to be in like the same situation where you have different models, different teams working off of different data sources, and then like you're kind of back to where you started. I guess you still have a more automated way to do it, but the output data is not what you would want. So like just think about like what are the data models that you have? What's the maturity of your warehouse? Are you working all off of the same source of truth? And then the other question is just like, hey, if you did get your data models into your downstream SaaS tools, for example, like HubSpot or Marketo, like would that solve your problem? Do
Hmm.
you have like interesting campaigns that you can run on these different segmentations? I think most marketers do. I think most marketers, would say like, hey, if I had access to all of this data, I could do all this cool stuff.
And I think to piggyback on that is understanding like you don't need to solve all of your use cases at once. Just start with maybe one destination like a Marketo or a Salesforce and look at what will drive the most business value from a use case perspective. Because there's a lot you can solve, but there's things that will have immediate quantifiable impact much faster.
Marketers are getting more and more data savvy, and like even as part of the job is expected to become more and more data savvy, to be closer to not only just like website data but also to be closer to prospect data, to
Hmm.
also be closer to user data and customer data. So having sort of like a single source of truth inside your data warehouse and being able to enable like actions based on that is sort of what I see as like a huge priority for marketers today.
Yeah, I think we're both in total alignment there. Marketers don't want to wait for IT resources to run campaigns. It's like they want to iterate and they want to experiment so they can figure out what works and what doesn't faster and ultimately move the needle forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Take care, Luke. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Alrighty, bye.